Hello, and welcome to another fully live episode of Hacking with Friends, where I am the DJ and also need to turn off that shared screen. There we go. Hello. Running a little bit late today due to some technical glitches, and my computer sounds like it is trying to take off like a helicopter, but hopefully we make it through the stream. Either way, we're going to check out some of the apps that are now available for the Flipper Zero, and we're also going to talk about WiLo, a new wireless protocol that's combining Wi-Fi and LoRa, let's just say two of my very strong interests in some cool ways. Why is it just showing off the AP? Okay, anyway, so lots to talk about today. I wanted to go ahead and show off some cool resources that are also just becoming available. I think that I mentioned that I did a talk at Hope in New York this year. It was super cool. I got to talk about electronics, microcontrollers, and my experience teaching and designing lessons for people who are just getting started with ethical hacking. So Hope went ahead and released all of the videos. So I think you're able to just download them individually, or you can download them via, or just get like a big flash drive that they send you of all the various talks at Hope. I believe that mine are in here somewhere. I haven't, maybe I'll just search for myself. Am I in here? Am I a product? Advanced Wi-Fi hacking with $5 microcontrollers. That's me. Teaching with microcontrollers. Hope for ethical hacking education on a budget. Yeah, cool. So my talk is here. It has an option, I think, for that to be like fully transcribed, and I think you can do like subtitles and stuff as well. This was a really cool talk. I was completely out of breath when I did this because my friend Nick very helpfully told me to go to the wrong building, and I was politely waiting for somebody else to finish their talk, but there was nobody after them. So they chose to take a bunch of extra time. I found out I was in the wrong place and had to run to the next room where everybody was about to leave, since I was now 5 minutes late. So if you want to see me completely out of breath, about to have a panic attack on stage for the first 2 minutes and then deliver a great talk for the rest, it looks like it's 99 cents for a download. Well, you know, it might be worth it. Anyway, I really enjoyed this talk. It was cool to talk about all the various reactions we got to our attempts to teach Wi-Fi hacking, printed circuit boards, electronics, like all the various things we tried. Some of them were winners, some of them did not go over so well. And yeah, we found out very quickly which ones the kids that we were teaching enjoyed. I also just wanted to point out, and this is just as we welcome some new people jumping on the stream, this was the view as I was heading home from a hike. I think it was not last night, but the night before. I've actually never seen the Northern Lights before, but I think a lot of people in northernly states were treated to a pretty spectacular show. So if you are living somewhere north, you might have seen some of these as well. And it was pretty cool. The aurora kind of like pulses and races across the sky, and I've never seen that before. So pretty cool to see that for the very first time ever. And then, since we're talking about some upcoming technology, I wanted to throw this out there. WiLo. All right, so what is WiLo? Obviously, LoRa just means long range. So what is WiLo? Well, this is a Wi-Fi technique that allows you to use the same kind of chirping protocol that LoRa does in order to get better range, better reception at extreme distances. So this is a pretty clear hybrid of the two protocols, in which the logic here is that you could update a Wi-Fi device to use its radio to be more like LoRa. So, I mean, that's a pretty cool way of kind of combining these things. I obviously have been doing a lot of LoRa experiments, and I was able to climb a mountaintop and communicate back with my home network and trigger things on my desk from, I think it was like 40 miles away or so. There were a couple of hops involved there, but it's really cool to be able to work with this technology where I can be on a mountain communicating with a device back sitting on my desk. So the fact that maybe we could take some of this magic and sprinkle it on existing wireless devices is honestly kind of cool. And LoRa's kind of big secret, and the thing that makes it cool, is its chirp spreading standard, CSS. Great, yes, CSS, as we all know. So aside from having an unfortunate acronym, this is really the secret sauce behind LoRa being able to communicate over really long distances. So if you were able to take this like chirping standard, apply it to a Wi-Fi radio, then in theory anyway, maybe you get greatly expanded distance, and maybe you even get something comparable to what you might get with LoRa. Now, So let's see. The YLO approach was done indoors in a lab in a hallway. 500 meters is not that impressive to me. But they're saying it has a 96% successful transmission rate. Again, 500 meters. I'm not sure if this is anything to write home about. I'd love to see this maybe compared to Wi-Fi and see like what the advantages are, because obviously this protocol is not meant for sending like a ton of data, but it's certainly interesting to see like what is out there now in terms of like wireless technologies kind of hybridizing themselves and making it so you can use them in creative ways. All right, cool. So we'll probably talk about that more. I wanted to talk about the flipper. So the Flipper Zero is able to be controlled in all sorts of ways. And if you have a flipper, if you're thinking about getting one, then there are all different ways you can connect to it. So I have my flipper here. I've had it for quite some time. I have like an anglerfish on the back to denote this as my primary flipper. And it has been updated all the way to the most recent firmware. So I have this plugged in via USB serial, and that gives me the most options here to communicate with it. But if I want to, I can also communicate with it directly over my phone via the mobile app. So all that's pretty cool, but I wanted to show off some of the things that are beyond just the built-in features. So if you have a flipper and you haven't really touched it, or if you haven't touched it in a while, let's go ahead and show off how you can interact with it. So I'm going to bring my screen back. And the idea here is that we want to open, in this case, QFlipper. Always opens on the wrong screen. Yep, there we go. All right, so here we have my flipper. It has information about, I'll pull this up in the background just so there's something relevant. Information about the screen. I can even maximize this, and I can use these buttons here to navigate what I'm doing. Right now, I'm doing some key cracking, no big deal. Nobody needs to know about that, but I can navigate and I can actually see the screen here. So the QFlipper application is, in my opinion, the best and most direct way to update it. I can see it's running release 1.0.1. I can install new updates or hybrid, or not hybrid, but like third-party firmware if I want to right here. And it's very, very useful. Now, this doesn't necessarily have a lot of other things I can do. I can update the firmware here. I can get logs, information. I can browse. I can maybe upload things if I want to, but this isn't a ton of functionality. It isn't like everything that I really want to do. And obviously there's no mention of apps here or anything like that. So unless you are on a smartphone, then this might not actually be the best way to communicate with your flipper. So instead, let's take a look at Flipper Labs. So you are going to first need to quit QFlipper because these two things can't be running at the same time. They monopolize each other's serial ports. And this is one of the, oh, wait, no, that's not what I want. That's not what I want either. All right. Oh, this is Firefox. That's why. Okay, so you cannot use Firefox for this. That is something that is important to remember. Firefox doesn't have web serial, which means it's not able to connect with the Flipper device. So let me go over to my Chrome and let's see. I'm going to pull this up. And here we can see lab.flipper.net. I'm going to just, I've got the subdomain already, but I'm going to get rid of that. And let's just go to the main labs. So this automatically connected to my flipper. You, if you're doing this for the first time, might need to like give it permission to connect to your flipper. But here I have my flipper. It is now, I'm able to do basically, this is the screen. I think, can I click to press these? No, I can't. That's too bad. But anyway, I can see the screen. So if I, start doing stuff on here, you can see it's actually updating on the screen, which is pretty cool. So I've got all my firmware information here. I can see the hardware version. I can see the radio stack. All the cool stuff that are the stats, but then I have these apps. So all these applications have been divided up by categories. We have the ones using the sub-gigahertz radio, RFID, NFC, infrared, GPIO. So that's anything where you're going to need a plug-in. So if you see this GPIO flag, that basically means you need other hardware in order to use it. iButton, USB, games, media, tools, and Bluetooth. So if I wanted to just focus on Bluetooth, let's say I want to create a Bluetooth mouse with my flipper. I can click here. I can see BT trigger or find my flipper. Oh, that's interesting. So in this case, if I wanted to, let's say that I want to learn more about this. So I'm going to use the Bluetooth functionality on the flipper to do something sneaky. I'm going to do find my flipper. So it's going to use my Flipper Zero as an air tag. Instructions are here. So let's go ahead and install this. So if I want to install this from the Flipper Labs, I'll click on install and it's done. that's why I think this is pretty cool. Does the existence of web cereal imply the existence of web oatmeal? Thank you for that, Leo. All right, so this is now installed. So that means if I want to, I can go ahead and run this application on my Flipper and actually give it a try. So we'll do that in a second, but I just wanted to shout out some of what I think are the most interesting apps here. If I go away and go back, is that undo? Do I have to? I'll just select all of them, all apps. All right, so let's talk about the ones that I've chosen to install. This one is involving GPIO, so you need to install like a ESP8266 or something like that in order to get web access. But the idea is you can use your Flipper to do web scraping. So that is obviously pretty interesting, using your Flipper as like a web client to be able to download information from websites is pretty cool. Like, this project is interesting to me. Now, again, the GPIO marker means that we're going to need to install hardware in order to use this, but I still think this is one of the apps definitely worth trying. We also have radio scanners. This is listening in on sub-gigahertz radio with audio output. So if you wanted to play something over your Flipper, then this would be scanning around on the available frequencies and outputting any audio it hears. Cyborg detector. This is something that I was using for NFC fingernails. So there are these fingernail like add-ons that are little stickers that have an embedded antenna and LED, and they're NFC reactive. So if you're like paying with your card, they'll actually light up, and the NFC field will provide enough power to actually light up the LEDs on your fingernail. So if I wanted to test this, or if I had some other NFC reactive device, then I could use this cyborg detector to turn on the NFC field and basically turn it on to max and leave it on continuously. Now, this isn't usually the normal type of thing you'll see. For example, when I was in Las Vegas for DEF CON, like, I would hold it up to the card reader on the elevator door, and it would always like pulse on and off as the reader was attempting to read it. But if you want to just turn this on continuously, then it'll cause things like those NFC fingernail stickers to just continuously glow. So pretty cool as a source of power for NFC devices. I use this actually all the time because it's the most convenient way to generate a continuous NFC field to turn on something that is NFC powered. So I love this. There's some cheap NFC powered LEDs that you can get on AliExpress that will light up in response to this, but I found it really cool. So we can also do radio broadcasting. So this is nice because obviously we don't see the NFC tab or the GPIO tab, which means we can actually run this directly on the device. Now, I installed this because it allows us to take Flipper music files, FMF and TXT, and convert them into sub-gigahertz radio files. So what that means is we can play basically any music file here that we've converted into a Flipper-friendly format. So if we want to make a little radio station on a particular frequency, or at least broadcast like briefly something over that frequency, then we would have the ability to do that here. So kind of cool, because between the two apps that I've downloaded, the one that downloads and plays, or the scanner that listens to and plays audio that it receives on the radio, and then this music to sub-gigahertz radio converter, you could send messages from one Flipper to another in an audio format over radio. That I think is pretty cool, being able to take full advantage of the Flipper's sub-gigahertz radio. All right, so some other recommended QR code generator. Let's say that you're at a class or something and you want to be able to rapidly generate a QR code. Being able to do so on your Flipper is moderately handy. Of course, you have to type it in, which is a little bit annoying, but being able to display it on your Flipper, I think that that is cool. You can pass it around, people scan it. It's just a lot faster than generating a QR code, for example, on a website. So I've done classes where I need everybody to go to a particular resource, and then I've just typed it into my Flipper and then passed it around, and people can just take a picture and scan it, and then they get the web domain or whatever it is. Pretty cool. I thought it was useful. You can also do the same thing with NFC. So you know how you can scan an NFC tag and it'll pop up a URL? Well, this Flipper application will allow you to emulate a tag that is advertising a URL. So I think that's really cool. Being able to pass around a device or basically have people scan your Flipper to get a URL. That's cool for like conferences or other things. I know that people have like business cards and other things you're supposed to like stick to a table where people can scan it. This means you just hide it under the table, put a sticker on top, and boom, you've got the same thing, at least temporarily. So I thought this was a clever usage of the NFC protocol, like to be able to advertise something. And again, this is to me pretty similar to the QR code in terms of its utility. But you could probably use it to make a malicious malicious tag as well. I have not done so. So we also have the RFID detector. There's multiple different types of these RFID readers that will protect a door, and you don't know which one you're dealing with until you hit it with a couple different types of frequencies and see which ones it responds to. So in this case, the RFID detector allows you to detect what type of frequency the reader is using. So that allows you to know which of the apps you should use or which of the protocols you should use to try to interact with it. This is a diagnostic tool to be able to find out very quickly which frequency set a particular reader is using. All right, question from the audience. Can't we get LTE SIM on Flipper? So I imagine that would probably be like a GPIO project, if anything, because there are relatively cheap LTE radios that we could theoretically plug into this. And I see no reason why it couldn't then like make data connections and do stuff like that. I haven't seen it yet, but I'll keep looking around. And if you see it on the list of apps as we go through them, we're literally covering all the apps that are currently available for Flipper, just highlighting the ones that I myself have installed and found great. The apps catalog is great because sometimes your favorite firmware doesn't include your favorite apps, like POC SAG scanner, for example, and you can add the apps from there. Yeah. I absolutely think that this interface and the website being integrated with Chrome and just installing when you click install, it's such a smooth experience. I think it's really, really wonderful. And then another question. So I need 2 flippers. Well, I have. I'm sorry, is your username Waxing Gibbous, like the moon? I think that's fantastic, by the way. Better than a waning gibbous, anyway. But anyway, Waxing Gibbous, do I need 2 flippers? Well, to send messages over radio from one to the other, yes, you would need 2 flippers. And I myself did buy 2 flippers, but then I've been distributing them to the rest of my team so that we can do some cool hacking experiments. So I actually only have one at the moment. Maybe I'll have to pick up a second one. But yes, I have 2 flippers. I use them to both communicate with each other and then also conduct different types of research. And I also like to conduct head-to-head trials with different firmware. So I'll do like an alternative, like third-party firmware on it and see if it can really do that much more or if it's worse at certain tasks. And that's my argument anyway for having 2 of them. But obviously, not everybody needs to grab 2 flippers in order to enjoy them. Also, hello, Rodrigo. Glad you made it this week. Running a little bit late this week as my computer is struggling per usual, but yeah, it is good to be on. Let's see. I saw a modified ESP32S3 with SIM GPIO pinout. Yeah, the ESP32S3 is proving to be one of the most popular new Espressif chips. It has so much great like input and output options, like for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, native USB. It's really got everything. So a lot of people are choosing to support it in their projects, and Flipper is no exception. As I've been learning all these LoRa technologies as well, most of them are using either a Nordic Semiconductors chip or an ESP32S3. So it's quickly becoming the new standard, and there are a lot of really awesome things available for that. So yeah, highly recommend it. So, all right, back to the apps. Last one we covered was RFID detector. Let's keep it going. So we covered QR code. Oh, this is okay. This is the one that you mentioned. I haven't downloaded that one, but if you want to tell us why you enjoy it so much, then please let me know. Let's see, barcode. So I haven't needed to generate any barcodes, but obviously that seems cool. Calculating resistance from different bands. Like I find this actually, I'm installing this. I have to calculate the resistance of resistors by a color band all of the time. So having effectively like a field guide to what the total resistance is for a resistor based on the color bands, that as an electronics person is incredibly useful to me, like as just like a tool. How easy it is to input is up to the user design. So NFC Magic, this is an application for writing to NFC tags that are special. So let me explain why this matters. So if you want to make a perfect copy of a key, and this might be something that a reader checks to make sure that you are in fact using the proper key and not like a spoofed one, you need to be able to write over the manufacturer's section of the card. Now, typically this is burned in and this is read-only memory where the manufacturer will like place some sort of manufacturer ID first, and then everything else is writable by the customer. Now you can get what are called magic cards, and these magic cards have the manufacturer section able to be rewritten. And this is really interesting because it means we can make a perfect copy or a perfect clone of a card that we're interested in. So without these cards, we can't really do much. But typically, NFC writers don't attempt to write to this area because, well, it's unwritable in most normal cards, at least it's supposed to be. So if you have one of these magic cards, then it means that you can use this application, which I'll bring back up again, to write to that magic card. And that I think is really, really cool because it means you can do some of these more advanced hackery options that require you to get special cards in order to finish what it is you're trying to do. So let's say that we get a perfect copy of a card and we want to write it to another card. Well, we would need to use this app in order to make sure we're writing to that special magic sector that allows us to spoof the manufacturer's code as well as the code that we've copied from another card. So super, super cool. All right, what are some other, wait, what? Okay, that's an air monitor. I thought it was like Airmon NG. We've got a UART terminal. That's pretty cool. If you've got like a UART sensor or something, then it's always cool to be able to see that. But of course, I haven't installed that, so I'm not that interested. A flashlight, how bright can that be? Well, just enough to be somewhat useful, I guess. So we have an IR scope. This is great for being able to tell whether your IR project is working. Now, let's say that you're working on like, I don't know, like a remote emulator, or you're using infrared as a protocol that you're communicating with. Well, how the hell do you know whether or not you are burning out the LED, if the LED is on strongly, what's going on? So having this tool allows you to use the IR receiver in your flipper to tell whether or not your infrared project is even working at all. Given that infrared is invisible to the human eye, this is really important to prevent yourself from going insane. So I installed this when I was attempting to use infrared to like play a kind of laser tag style game. We did a DEF CON badge where we were trying to figure out whether or not their LEDs were even working, or how, or what the distance was that they could be received. This tool was incredible for letting us figure out what the range on our devices was and what the raw data on the other side was as well. So IR scope, surprisingly useful, I have to say. All right, let's go through. All right, so Find My Flipper. Find My Flipper is basically, we kind of covered this already, but it's creating a air tag. If you didn't see the earlier example that we went through. Sorry, we're continuing on through. Oh, text to speech. So getting your flipper to talk, I found that to be very funny and stupid. So this isn't very high quality, but if you need your flipper to output audio and you want it to be speech, then you can give it a try. As I said, it's not great, but it is definitely a thing that you can do. So next up is Bluetooth trigger. This is for triggering actions on your phone from a distance. So this turns on the Bluetooth radio and allows you to connect to another device and then trigger, for example, your camera. So imagine you're on vacation, you want to put your phone somewhere, and then you want to trigger it remotely when everyone's ready. This prevents you from having to get everybody together and then like hope that the shutter goes off at the right time. Instead, you can just tap your phone. You can tap your flipper, which will control your phone and set off the shutter when you're ready to take the picture. Of course, you do all sorts of other triggers as well, but that's just the most friendly and defensible one I can think of immediately. Light meter, this one needs GPIO. You need to plug in something. I do use this sort of thing for photography, but the fact it needs extra stuff is like not as useful for me. Tone generator. So this is something where if I need a pure tone, I can use the onboard speaker to create that tone. I think for output, like if I wanted to create like a complex tone, or if I need a specific tone for any reason, then I can use this as a reference to make sure that if I'm generating a tone, or I'm in my code attempting to generate a particular tone, I can match it here and make sure it sounds correct. Let's see, a voltage calculator. This is, oh yeah, a simple Ohm's law calculator. Again, this is another like electronics reference thing. Osmotron. Yes. Orgasmatron. Yes. So this is another flipper add-on that allows you to use it for the purpose of testing the onboard rumbler, we'll call it. So, lots of applications there for being able to turn on that particular part of the flipper's hardware. I will leave the rest to your imagination. Let's see, what else do we have? BMI Air Mouse. So this is probably my favorite one. If you want to create a simulated mouse and you want to connect over Bluetooth and then move that mouse around and click on things, then this is probably the most advanced, or at least most interesting application of the Bluetooth radio. I think that without some applications that allow you to remotely control something, then the Bluetooth feature is not as exciting as I was really hoping for. So being able to quickly maybe like run a script that pairs with your flipper as a Bluetooth mouse might be something that, I don't know, gets you remote control over a device while your friend is using it. I personally use it to annoy my friends while they are using a device that has a Bluetooth receiver. I just pair it as one of the available mice and find that you can do all sorts of things that are confusing remotely before somebody realizes what's going on. So that's my list of kind of recommended apps on the Flipper Zero that I've either tested out, tried out, or used for various purposes. I am curious though, if anybody is I don't know, like has a particular app that they're interested in or things that I haven't covered. I know a couple of you were shouting them out in the chat, and I'm definitely interested to hear which ones you are interested in covering more, except for the Rumbler. Probably we've covered that one enough. All right, so that is most of what I wanted to cover on the Flipper Zero, but I also wanted to show a couple of these other options here. So we have the files section, and this is where you can go through and see some of the things that you perhaps downloaded or generated. This is going to be where all the things that you have captured are. So if you have cards that you've saved, if you have other radio bursts that you saved, Flipper has a couple different ways of saving radio information. If you have a particular protocol that it recognizes that you want to save information from, it'll just read the information and store it in the proper protocol and make it really easy to replay. If you have an unknown signal and you don't recognize the protocol, then you can store like several seconds of radio traffic and just kind of reverse engineer it later, or just replay that audio or replay the radio signals without understanding what they are in a replay attack. This is pretty useful for anything that is outside the Flipper's knowledge of protocol. So that means like anything that is kind of like a rare signal that maybe doesn't have support within Flipper, but can easily just be recorded and then replayed. You can actually go ahead and go into the internal storage or the SD card and extract that information and study it in other programs. You can convert that into other things. So if you need to explore your Flipper and you need to download, for example, like a radio file and then replay it or open it in another program to do further analysis because maybe the Flipper doesn't have built-in support for that particular protocol, this, I think, is something that would be really useful and good for you to be able to access. So remember, if you need to access specific files on your Flipper and you want to analyze them in another program, then the file section of Flipper Labs, pretty useful. So then we also have our command line interface. So if we want to see how to control our Flipper over the command line, we can type a question mark and it gives us a list of all the different commands that are available. I think help also shows the same commands. So, oh yes, Vibro, great. Does it give me a list of all the subcommands? Nope. Application is running. Okay. So anyway, these are all the different things you can do directly over the command line interface. If you want to use that, if you've become very fancy with the Flipper and you know exactly what you want to do, or if you want to access a particular thing over the command line instead, then this should give you everything you need to get started. So we also have NFC tools. So NFC tools means that you can, let's see. It means that you can gather all of the reader keys that you collected on your Flipper, and you can start to use your computer's power to crack them instead. Now, this doesn't seem to be working very well on my Flipper. It says loading log like forever, and it doesn't ever really seem to finish this task. So it means a couple of things. Either there are no logs on my Flipper, or I have filled up the logs so much, which actually might be the case, that it's taking an exceptionally long time to load them. So I can also see we can do the manual attack. Let's see if it runs. Is it going to run? It doesn't seem like it's going to run. So this is a little bit disappointing to me just because I was really hoping that the embedded attack would be functional by now. So let me talk about what I mean by that and talk about the way that we read NFC keys. So over here on my screen, off my screen rather, let me turn that off, is a bunch of hotel keys that I've gotten from various hotels I've stayed at while traveling, going to conferences, that sort of thing. And if we wanted to copy any of these, it's not quite as straightforward as just putting it under my flipper. So let me just pick one that I know is pretty permissive, and I want to show off exactly what this looks like and why it's not as straightforward as you might think. So in order to do this, I'm actually going to, I think I might just break this URL or something so that I can use, there we go, QFlipper instead. All right, and I'm going to expand the screen and show exactly what it looks like to attempt to read. Let's go back. All right, so I'm going to go NFC. I've got this card that I want to read. It's a hotel key card. I'm going to click on read, and it's going to say, don't move. And then it's going to attempt to read it, and it's going to do its very best. Now we can see on the screen here, there's a couple things that we're doing. We're finding keys and we're reading sectors. So we want to go through and unlock all the various sectors to read them. And then we also need keys in order to read the full amount of data that's stored here. Now, if we're able to get most of those keys, it sometimes is enough to like open a door or unlock something. And in particular, this might be, for example, if we have a hotel key card and we copy over most of the sectors that we can unlock, but there's a couple sectors we can't unlock, we might end up getting lucky and having it be that the unlockable sectors are related to a specific door, and the sectors we can unlock will still get us into the building. So that for that, I mean, like a hotel or something else that has external doors where anybody who has like a key card for a specific room can still get into the building. Sometimes that data will be stored in the beginning part of the card, and it won't matter that we're not able to recover the rest. However, if we're not able to get all 32 keys, then it means that we won't be able to fully copy this card. And odds are it won't open the room door, and it might not even open the exterior door either. So where's Doom? Yes, I'm sorry. I should definitely include Doom. All right, there we go. So we can see the final results on this, which I have to admit are much faster than they previously were, is we could read 14 of 16 sectors, but we're still lacking the keys necessary to fully read this. So that is a little unfortunate, right? Like we really want to be able to read this card fully. And honestly, this reads faster and has more data than we typically see on a lot of these cards. Some of these cards also will say that they need a password. And what that means is you actually need to go up to the reader and get that password before you can even attempt to unlock the data, because it's all encrypted with a phrase or something else that the reader has to supply. So in most cases, that means that you need to physically approach the reader and use this little tool here. I'll go back. And this tool extract my fair keys. We need to go up and touch the reader. And what it's going to do is it's going to extract the keys and allow you to then attack them using the power of the actual computer or phone that you're connected to, instead of the rather puny power of the flipper. So if I do this and touch the door, touch the reader, and then attempt to unlock this, I should be able to use the cracked keys to read the remaining sectors and perfectly copy this card. So if you're new to using the Flipper Zero to crack cards, then this is kind of the standard way it's been done. And I've been hoping that the nested attack that they've been talking about would be working in a relatively short amount of time, but it looks like the nested attacks are not working. Let me find for nested. So you can see it's included in Flipper Labs. Oh, can't connect to Flipper. That's because I'm in QFlipper. Let me get rid of that. All right, so I'm disconnecting from QFlipper. I'm going to refresh this, and let me show you the status. So Flipper nested. Interesting, right? Cool. Well, let's install it. Oh, no, failed to fetch application build. So this is not installable. As far as I can see, it is not possible to get this working. There's apparently a detailed guide here. Perhaps the Russian version is still working, but let's go ahead and see what it says. So it still says that you can get the compiled application, but then when you try to get it, it says, come back later, buddy. I'm like, all right. So it seems as though this project has been pulled, and also that there are some problems. So in the bottom, they mentioned that there are some issues with this. And also you need like a Python script running on the other side in order to connect and then run the computer side of this attack. So nested attacks are unique. It means that you can potentially extract the key information without going after the reader. It lets you skip a step. And that's why I was so excited to try this out and see whether or not it was in a more mature phase. It seems honestly like it's in a less mature phase than it was before. So barring some sort of update or some other sort of, I don't know, just like add-on, I think that maybe this attack is not quite working yet. And hopefully it will be. I don't know if it's going to be integrated into the way Flipper does this in the future, but I've seen them talking about wanting to include this attack. And I think that overall, it's one of the ones that I'm really interested in. So it seems like most of these applications are useful, working. Some of them are not. And you might find some of these applications that just don't install because the GitHub repositories they're pointing towards or the build that they're pointing towards are no longer either supported on the firmware that you're running or no longer maintained. So Flipper Nested was actually the reason why I wanted to do this segment. It was the one I was most excited about. And I have to point out that, yes, it is not, in fact, working as well as you might think. The installation process is much more complicated than these other ones. And it seems as though there are some pretty serious limitations still. So, yeah, I'm not totally sure why I haven't been able to dump all the NFC keys from my Flipper. I know I have a lot of them. However, with the new firmware and with having multiple flippers all the time, like it's possible that maybe I didn't get as many as I thought here. I just feel like maybe it's some sort of bug or glitch or something that's making it a little harder than I expected to go after NFC readers in particular and NFC cards. So that's my Flipper Zero update. If you guys have any applications that you're interested in me trying out, I have this connected and set up now. So, I found it to be pretty cool. All right, so one request is show more information about the new Hack RF1. I don't have one, but I really want one. It looks really cool, and I really love my existing Hack RF. We were doing a hike on the border with Canada the other day, and this is something we do occasionally. It's very fun and relaxing, and I'm gonna simultaneously pull this up and see if I can find it in the background. But we were walking around and I realized that there was this strange cutout, like this strange thing that looked a little unnatural. Like it didn't exactly look like it was supposed to be there. So I looked at it a little bit more closely and it turns out it was a government camera. Like as you get closer and closer to the border, it becomes more likely that you encounter surveillance. So in this case, I just wanted to show off. All right, I've got it now. This government cameras, we were doing this hike. I was like, that looks strange. It's got like a perfect view. There's a little cutout. And then at the last moment, I realized I was in fact being watched by a cellular enabled government camera. And of course, as it saw me, I'm sure it started transmitting and letting everyone know that we were there. Now, we were kind of wondering, how could you detect a camera like this? You can even see, oh my gosh, you can even see the transmitting antenna right here. So clearly our images were being broadcasted live. Somebody from Border Patrol did drive by us, but they were like, okay, these people aren't doing anything too interesting. How would we detect these cameras? Well, unfortunately, it's kind of difficult to detect them before they detect you. But if you wanted to walk around and make a map of where these were, you could use something like the Hack RF1 to listen in on the frequencies that they're going to be broadcasting on, and then kind of do like a directional antenna to figure out what direction it's coming from. And once you know something has me in its line of sight, it's coming from this direction, you could probably eliminate a couple like obvious places it's not, and then figure out where one of these devices is. So if you're looking for secret government cameras, then the new Hack RF1 is probably something that would be helpful. But that was just my little application of radio technology over the weekend. I was like, of all these secret cameras that are watching me everywhere, could I watch them back? And the answer is only after they see you first. So I'm sure there's some way of detecting them before they detect you, maybe like thermal or something like that. But as for what I was able to access, maybe a Hack RF1 is a fun way to find all the government cameras near you. Now, unfortunately, this made me super paranoid because after walking through a really beautiful hike, but one that had, again, a bunch of hidden cameras all over the place, I started looking for them everywhere. And of course, once you go away from the border, there's a lot less cameras hidden in random debris around the trail. The new Hack RF1 with ESP32 and some new stuff for fox hunting can do it as I know. Okay, cool. I'm really interested in learning more about that. And yes, Leo, that was my other idea is obviously, especially in a cold area, anything using power is going to create a heat signature. So I got one of those heat guns off AliExpress that's able to display on a screen a heat gradient, and it's able to see hotspots. And that's how I'm able to find active electronics in an environment that's relatively cold. So probably your best bet would be like a drone that has like very sensitive infrared going around and trying to find hotspots or heat signatures or anything that's broadcasting. However, a lot of these devices will have something very low power, like a passive infrared that's waiting to be triggered and woken up. And once that's triggered, then it'll turn on the more noisy or heat consuming electronics. So I imagine the heat signature is probably, pretty difficult to spot, but it's honestly kind of challenging to find stuff like this. So triangulating like nearby radio transmissions or like finding devices that are noisy, talking nearby when there's nothing else around you. That was like my first thought. I was like, what, man, I wish I had like my hack RF, because I feel like we would know the instant we stepped in front of one of these. So yeah, fun to monitor government surveillance cameras watching us, and a beautiful hike if perhaps a little paranoia inducing. Where can you get one? I imagine Great Scott Gadgets would be the place to get it. I think that they're the one that put out the Hack RF one. So yeah, I think that's where you could go ahead and get one. So there's another project that I wanted to point out, and this is a project that I was hoping would be a little bit more useful. I like to shout out tools I think are going to be useful or cool or interesting, and this one I thought would be really cool. But as of right now, I haven't been able to get it working all the way, but I still wanted to shout it out in case anybody else is able to. It's got versions already pre-compiled, and I thought that would make it easier to flash. It wasn't. I haven't gotten any serial output out of this. I'm not exactly sure if I'm doing anything wrong, but this project seems very cool. So let's say that you have a cat, as I do, and that cat is going out into places that are increasingly far away, and I want to make sure that if the cat doesn't come back, I can fly around and figure out where the cat is. And I want to use something I already have. So I have a bunch of AirTags. AirTag collars are like a couple of dollars. What if I put an AirTag on the cat, and then I use something like an ESP32 to fly around and detect that AirTag and figure out where the cat is? Now, this would not be useful in a city where there's tons and tons of AirTags, because AirTags change their identifier every 15 minutes. They do this in an encrypted way that you can't really relate back to anything unless you connect back to Apple servers, which hold all the keys. So that means if this was in a densely crowded area that has lots of AirTags, this would not be a useful way of tracking a cat. But let's say your cat is off in a field or a wooded area where there's going to be no AirTags. Well, then this actually could be pretty useful. So my intention here was using this project, which detects AirTags using the ESP32. You can see it supposedly supports the ESP32 S3, and then combine this with our LoRa boards. So over here, not on my screen, I have an example of how we built these LoRa backpacks, and these nuggets have an ESP32 S3, which is capable of scanning for Bluetooth, and then the backpack has a LoRa chip on it that is enabling it to communicate over multiple miles if necessary, to send back information about what it's found from Bluetooth. So in theory, you could strap this underneath the drone, you could fly it around where your pet might be, and it would send you messages over LoRa telling you the Bluetooth signal strength if it does in fact detect a AirTag while it flies. That means you would get live information, kind of like a hotspot, a hot and cold kind of like search method, where you're able to actually identify what area your pet might be in and then kind of zero in on it as well. So I thought this would be a really cool and kind of a human way of applying this technology for something that is pretty common nowadays. AirTag collars are something that are pretty useful, but if it's in a giant field, unless I want to fly around with an iPhone strapped underneath the drone, which by the way is the actual best way of doing this, if you have a drone that can support the weight, it's very difficult to then use like an AirTag unless you're walking around with an iPhone and kind of searching manually. So to speed that up, I thought I would give this a try. I spent a couple hours troubleshooting it this week, and I wasn't able to get it fully working, but I'm hoping that by next week, I'll be able to figure out what's going on and give an example of tracking down a pet from the air using an AirTag scanner. So again, I want to do some more Bluetooth hacking. I think it's a really cool protocol. It's not as easy to get started with as Wi-Fi is, but a lot of the microcontrollers that we're working with now have Bluetooth built in. So some of these cool applications combining Bluetooth with LoRa. Obviously, our other kind of technology we were talking about today was combining Wi-Fi with LoRa. So it's kind of cool maybe trying to combine Bluetooth and LoRa to do something useful. Again, maybe not super useful in a city or a place with a lot of anonymous AirTags constantly changing their identifier. You wouldn't be able to track a specific one, but still in an area without much without many AirTags in it and without much Bluetooth traffic, it could give you an indication of where your pet has scurried to. You gotta catch your cat to wear it first, which might be the actual hard part. Yes, we have 2 cats. One of them just goes in the full reverse the second you put a collar on him and will just run backwards until he can take the collar off. The second one doesn't care. So our fortunately, the one that doesn't care is the one that started sneaking into a wild space where I'm a little worried about foxes and bald eagles and all the other things that, you know, live in this area. So if I wanted to make sure that if he gets stuck in a tree or, you know, is treed by a predator, I can find out where he is and bring him back. Seems like it would be worth the potential scratches, which I already had plenty of getting that collar on. Unless you clone the AirTag first, you might be able to follow it to a crowded area and then track the MAC hopping. That's true. So if you were able to clone the AirTag, then if it's deterministic, if it's just going to be going through the same sequence, we might be able to use a second cloned AirTag. And we also do have emulators. So if I wanted to take a different ESP32S2 and emulate an AirTag, then I could actually do it on both ends. The thought is that the AirTag is like generally it's weather sealed, it's got a good battery on it, it's going to last for a long time, and they're very cheap. So I kind of prefer to use a standard AirTag if at all possible, just because that means it's a little bit easier to get your hands on and get started with. Like obviously like custom modded firmware, it's great, but cats get into a lot of stuff. And like the smaller it can be, I think it's probably going to be safer for the pet. And just to make sure that like they're not hauling around some like really giant thing with a big old battery pack. Why not get the pet a LoRa module? So that's an interesting thought. So I guess like all the reasons I just said about like making sure that it's very small, making sure that it's sealed. In theory, though, a small LoRa module that has like a built-in GPS, provided it was, you know, quite small and about the same size and weather sealed. You know, there's a lot of like ifs and like other requirements here to make sure the cat doesn't destroy it, or to make sure that it's cheap enough that if the cat does get in like a scuffle or gets like stuck on something, that AirTag could pop off, and then you're just using the drone maybe to find the AirTag the cat left on a tree somewhere. Let's see. What is the best firmware for a flipper in 2024? So I have not been tracking some of the other third-party ones. I've given them a shot, and I wasn't too super impressed by some of the built-in modules. Obviously, being able to open like Tesla charging ports is pretty cool, but aside from that, I wasn't wowed by some of the other like Rogue Master and stuff like firmware bundles that I tried. So I might need to revisit this and maybe do a review of how they stack up. I wish I had my second flipper now that I think of it. But either way, this is something where you can definitely try out some tools that might not be included in the official firmware of Flipper because it might be too illegal, or it might be illegal in some countries, so they just felt like they needed to remove it. But if you do want to check out some of the unrestricted third-party builds on Flipper, then there are some interesting Easter eggs in there. I just myself have not found them super helpful. So maybe if you have some recommendations, I would love to check them out. I was looking into LoRa trackers. They're all big. Yeah. So I did find some really interesting, super cheap LoRa boards that are about $13 on AliExpress. They seem pretty cheap. They're like the LoRa like sticks. And you would still need to attach GPS to that. You still need a battery. You still need power management. Like, you know, there's a lot of stuff that you still need to do here. So using an AirTag and then making the receiver the custom thing that maybe can't get thrown around that much, to me anyway, made sense, just because pets are unpredictable, and having the smallest, most durable and rugged thing that's also cheap enough that if it gets lost, I don't care. That's kind of the idea here. But yeah, my hacker brain was immediately like, oh, make a custom LoRa tracker that just sends, you know, their location every 15 seconds. And that would be ideal. I just worry that it would get wet, it would get stuck on something, or it might be too large for the pet to effectively walk around with. I'd rather have my drone, you know, sagging and barely able to hold my battery and like my LoRa stack than my cat. I'm running Momentum. All right, so that's one that I'd actually never heard of. So if you've got your favorite third-party Flipper Zero firmware, please let me know. I'd like to try it out, and maybe we could do another Flipper Zero segment talking about all of the various like third-party builds that you can run on it. Again, there's some stuff that's a little too spicy for the main firmware. So if you want to try something out that is not covered in the official firmware, it might be illegal in a different country. Maybe it's legal in your country still. That's a perfectly legitimate reason for trying out some of these Flipper forks that have the spicier things on them. All right, so that's about all the time we have today. Started a little later today, but I wanted to make sure everything was working properly. And I have to give a big shout out to my computer for not failing, despite the fact that it sounds like it's trying to cool down the entire room. Thank you also to everyone hanging out today. We're going to do another cloud security lab. Oh, and I wanted to show you, just wait. Next week, when we do this cloud security lab, you're actually going to be able to see it. Look at this. I figured out how to make the font huge. So if you want to check it out on the last stream, I did one of our first Burp Suite tutorials where I was showing off how you can get OS command injection provided that somebody along the way of the shared security model makes a mistake. So this sort of misconfiguration happens all the time. In this case, we're running an insecure application that is basically running a bash script in order to execute a stock check. And by manipulating the request that we're sending out, the post request, we're able to change values and instead inject something by using an escape character and making it so that our bash script runs instead. So pretty fun, pretty cool. If you didn't see it last time, you might have to squint, but we'll make sure that the next one that we do covering cloud security is also large enough for you to follow along as well. So I know I've talked a lot of smack about the Burp Suite Community Edition being rate limited. If I'm doing any of these labs that involve brute forcing, it is super, super unfun. However, for some of these other labs where you're learning about modifying parameters and all the various tools available for you to like poke around at a web application and get into learning about cloud security and finding vulnerabilities, then it's actually quite useful. And I would say the Burp Suite Community Edition is very well documented. It's going to work really good for you if you're doing a lot of these labs. Just if it says brute forcing, then you can flip on over to OWASP Zap, which is completely like not nerfed in any way, shape, or form. And you can do almost all the same things that you do in Burp Suite in Zap as well. So that was a lot of fun. We'll have more stuff on cloud security on the Friday stream, and hopefully we'll have Killian back from vacation and cover all the hacker news of the week, of which there's already so much that I wanted to cover now, but I have to save it for the Friday stream. So if you want to hang out with us and talk about the hacker news on Friday, it's going to be at 2 p.m., hopefully, I believe. I know this one was a little bit later, but you can catch us there. And if you have any additional questions, you can always leave them on the YouTube channel or on our Discord server. And again, a big shout out to people who've been sending me cool stories to cover on on Mastodon, on YouTube, and on our Discord server. It's been really great to just every week open it up and have a bunch of great stories. So make sure to share them with me. I love covering them, and a lot of you are in a position to find some really great stuff. So if you want to support the stream, you can always go to varonis.com/Kody. That's Kody. I deeply appreciate it, and it lets Varonis know that you want the stream to continue twice a week, every week, and it doesn't cost you a thing. All right, everyone, that's all we have for today. We'll see you again on Friday, and I've got some family in Florida, so I'm going to be catching up with them. If you are down there, make sure to stay safe. Seems crazy down there. Hopefully weather will improve next week. All right, everyone, we'll talk to you soon on Friday, and have a good week, everyone. Goodbye.